cut to the chase. Everyone give me some space. Don't fall out, we fall into place. Every step walking with grace, amen. Keeping my foot off the brakes. Impact, I'm ready to brace. We fall down and land on our face. Just to get up and finally escape. Wait, boom, boom. Baby, I'm trying to get paid. Legends don't die in a grave. They live through the story they made, okay? Boom, boom. Baby, I'm trying to get paid. Legends don't die in a grave. Hey, legends don't die anyway. I was working on a play today. Body bags covered away. I paved, zipped up like a bathing ape. How many of us then came and stayed? Not too many. I've been staying awake to get it and get right on every mistake. I give them a bite, they taking a plate. It's all been a feeling that I couldn't shake. So I just keep killing till I'm at the gates. We straight, we treat them like worms in a lake. They bake, just give me a drum and a bass. I skate and grind till I'm numb in the face, okay? Don't fuck up my day. Don't talk about clutch, I got ice in my veins. I'm colder than Trey, I stick to the code. I'm glitching the game. I do anything for the win at the end of the day. I gotta cut to the chase. Everyone give me some space. Don't fall out, we fall into place. Every step walking with grace, amen. Keeping my foot off the brakes. Impact, I'm ready to brace. We fall down and land on our face. Just to get up and finally escape. Wait, boom, boom. Baby, I'm trying to get paid. Legends don't die in a grave. They live through the story they made, okay? Boom, boom. Baby, I'm trying to get paid. Legends don't die in a grave. Legends don't die anyways. Boom, boom. Baby, I'm trying to get paid. Legends don't die in a grave. They live through the story they made, okay? Boom, boom. Baby, I'm trying to get paid. Legends don't die in a grave. Legends don't die anywhere.
Top programs usher in a new era at starting quarterback, and will they be able to live up to the high-pressure stakes? And as we approach closer to the kickoff of the 2025 season, who is the player, the coach, and the team with the most to prove? And what is the future of the college football playoff, and why is college football the only entity that always keeps trying to reinvent the wheel? That's all coming up in a Prove It edition of On the Marks with Jason Marks. And let me get my mic on here. Welcome into the first edition of On the Marks. I am Jason Marks. I am glad that you decided to give me a chance, as this is a Prove It edition of this show, because that's what we're going to be talking about. It's going to be very college football loaded, but we will be talking more sports as the show goes on. I will give more information about how I'm going to, or at least my plan anyways, for this platform going forward. If you would give me a follow on Twitch, on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, I will have videos and clips of all of that. That will be at On the Marks Media. So let's not get into it. And if you're in the chat room, and by the way, QBS FK or KFAH, thank you for the follow 5 minutes ago. We're hoping to build this up relatively soon. But let's just get right into it on the Prove It edition of On the Marks. So I asked a question over the weekend of your player, of your coach, and your team that has the most to prove in the 2025 season. Now, I know that some of you have already said, just went with the whole gambit with one team. I know Happy Pappy on Instagram said Florida across the board with DJ Lagway, with Billy Napier, and the Gators, which they do have a lot to prove, and there's a lot more expectation for Florida this season. Now, I'll throw out a couple of names. We'll start with the players. And I look at this, and you can go many ways with this. I think the first one that really, really kind of stands out is that Alabama with Ty Simpson. And I will say this, that I've been kind of skeptical about Ty Simpson because there's really not a lot that you can go on. And it's a big difference because everybody's saying that he's going to be Mac Jones 2.0, where Mac Jones, for some reason, was a unknown, but I didn't think that. I think that we had a good enough sample size of Mac Jones when Tua went out in the 2019 season to know what he is capable of doing. With Ty Simpson, we haven't really seen that much. Jalen Milroe with his Jekyll and Hyde persona at quarterback, where we're looking 2 years and Ty Simpson couldn't overtake him, maybe that's a little bit of cause of concern. But Kalen DeBoer, who, by the way, may be a coach with a lot to prove in 2025, and he's been acting like it. We'll get into that a little bit later. But for Ty Simpson, now with offensive coordinator Ryan Grubbs coming in, which he was initially supposed to be there, but decided to go to Seattle for a season, get fired. Now he's coming back. That maybe there's a lot more optimism with Ty Simpson heading into the 2025 season. And if he can actually come through with it, then the ones who wrote Alabama off maybe a little prematurely, as some usually do, may have wound up doing it again. And we'll get into Kalen DeBoer a little bit more once we discuss the coaches. But Ty Simpson, I think, is one player in the 2025 season that's going to have a lot to prove. Another, you could say, obvious one is Arch Manning. Because what does Arch Manning have to prove? I'll say this. When I was at 24/7 Sports, when I first started there in 2022, it was around the time that Arch Manning was being recruited. Then he committed to Texas. And I can't count how many times on both of my hands, both of them, that I heard, would Arch Manning be the number one player in the 2022 class if his last name was Smith or anything other than Manning? Like, there was a lot of skepticism. You can maybe call it hate, but there was a lot of skepticism. So it's been a couple of seasons, and we've seen Arch get a little bit of playing time, but he's stood on the sidelines as Quinn Ewers has gone through his era in Austin, and now that he's coming in. You could even say that Texas has a lot to prove in 2025. Because the expectations are going to be rampant with the way that they have been recruiting. And how they came so close to the SEC championship, lost in overtime to Georgia, made the college football playoff, an overtime victory over Arizona State, which a lot of people didn't expect. But heading into this season, some would even say they might be the number one team when the AP preseason poll comes out. Now, do I put a lot of stock in the AP preseason poll anymore in this playoff era? I don't. Will it give you a gauge of what to expect for the 2025 season? Sure, it could. But Texas, a lot of expectations. Arch Manning has got to prove that he's not in the shadow of his uncles Peyton and Eli, where that this guy is actually a good football player. And I could see the potential with the film that I've saw and the sample size that we've had at Texas. It's there. It's there. But it comes down to Steve Sarkisian. You can even throw in there, what does he have to prove in 2025? That he wins an SEC championship, makes a deep run into the playoff, national championship. Where's the expectation and what the Steve Sarkisian have to prove? Because we saw Texas's last playoff run. Kalen DeBoer, when he was at Washington, beat them to the surprise of even me. Losing to Georgia twice in 2024. And then losing to Ohio State. And we're going to get more into, once we discuss the coaches, of where's the stake when we've heard all the sizzle. And we'll get into that here in a second. Another player that I have heard that maybe a prove it or in a prove it year. And this is not on the radar for most because this team isn't as talked about as much as Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, Penn State going forward. But Nick Harbor at South Carolina, this feels like a prove it year. I'll get into mine here in a second. But Nick Harbor, it seems like a prove it year for him in 2025. Came in very highly touted as a 5-star recruit. Was going to play wide receiver, tight end. He was going to be that big target for Lenora Sellers. But it really it's almost been kind of like a Kyle Pitts syndrome in a way for the Atlanta Falcons. It's like, he's there, but you don't really see him there. Now, Nick Harbor has changed his mindset. He was a track guy. He wanted to run for the Olympics, but now he's foregone that, the focus on football. And if it doesn't happen this year for Nick Harbor, is it ever going to happen? So I think that Nick Harbor, you could put in that category for one of the players with the most to prove in 2025. Now, I'm going to go with one that's probably obvious, and probably some of you will go, really? Which I expect. But I think the player that's going to have the most to prove is going to be Nico Iamaleava at UCLA. Because with all the drama and the saga that happened in the offseason, whether it was him or his camp that was trying to shake Tennessee down for $4 million, and Tennessee didn't take the bait, they just said, all right, cool, you're going to head out. Which, by the way, turned out to be the first market correction in this madness that has been the era of NIL. So, after Tennessee rebuffs him, not a lot of stock into him, and UCLA gets him at a bargain for less than $2 million. Which, was Nico Iamaleava really a $4 million quarterback at Tennessee? Not really. This is a prove-it year for him because he's got to prove to the college football world that he was the highly touted quarterback when he was coming out of high school. Now, granted, is it going to be an easy task to do? No. Because UCLA is, how do I say this nicely, on an uphill climb. Deshaun Foster trying to rebuild, get the foundation, and build that program back up after Chip Kelly decided in the middle of the night to just be an offensive coordinator and say to hell with this era of coaching in college football, which a lot of coaches have done. So now Nico has got to prove now in the Big Ten with a far less talented team than what Tennessee has, that he is one of the top quarterbacks in the league. If he and what would be considered a success for, or a successful season for Nico Iamaleava at UCLA? Is it getting him to a bowl game? The 6-6 record in a bowl game? Is it 4-5 in the Big Ten? Is it 8-4? Like, what would be the success? What would be considered the success for Nico Iamaleava? And it's not going to be. I would say it's 6-6. If they go to a bowl game, I would consider it a good step for Nico Iamaleava at UCLA. But again, not going to be easy. I think Sam Leavitt at UCLA, or I'm sorry, not UCLA, Arizona State, may have something to prove in 2025. Because now he's getting Jordan Tyson, who was out with injury for the playoff. Arizona State, who surprised the world by winning the Big 12 and making the college football playoff, which is why the Big 12 is no longer doing preseason media predictions at media days, because Kenny Dillingham killed it. But I think Sam Leavitt has to prove it again that he is one of the top quarterbacks in college football, because he's not really spoken about that much, given the fact that it's Arizona State and it's the Big 12. And can Arizona State do that again, make the playoff again, which is going to be tough because you have Texas Tech, you have Baylor on the rise, Colorado. What are they going to be in 2025? Which we'll get more into them a little bit later. But Sam Leavitt could be one of those that you throw in there. But here's one that I haven't really heard much about. And maybe with all the chaos, off-season chaos that's been going on down in the Plains, maybe it's being a little bit shadowed. But Jackson Arnold, this could be a redemption year for him. Coming into Oklahoma, another 5-star quarterback, where it didn't pan out at Oklahoma, where Oklahoma had one of the most putrid offenses that you could imagine in 2024. And now he heads to Auburn, where he's also competing with an incoming freshman in Deuce Knight. But the interesting thing about this is, in Hugh Freeze's history, he's been considered a quarterback whisperer at Liberty. You saw what he done with the likes of Malik Willis. You saw at Ole Miss what he was able to do with Bo Wallace. But Peyton Thorne comes in transfer out of Michigan State for a couple of years in his tenure at Auburn, and it's just been a dud. And Auburn doesn't have an easy road ahead for them. But Jackson Arnold has a lot to prove now, coming in with a new SEC team. Will the offense be as a lot more efficient than what it was at Oklahoma in 2024? Because he kind of went out on a whimper in the middle of the season, and now this is his opportunity to make that comeback. But again, has Hugh Freeze maybe lost a little bit of his magic when it comes to the quarterback position in college football? So now that we've talked about some of the players, and if you're in the chat, go ahead and throw in some players, coaches, teams that have a lot to one more player, actually. And he comes out of the ACC. Actually, two of them. We'll throw two of them out there from the ACC. Miller Moss at Louisville and Cade Klubnik at Clemson. There was a lot of hype coming in for Cade Klubnik when he was recruited and eventually committed and signed at Clemson. And it started out good, kind of faded a little bit, started coming back a little bit when Clemson made that run to sneak their way into the college football playoff with the ACC championship. The potential is there for Cade Klubnik. And I have heard some in the media say that he could have a Heisman-like season out in Death Valley. And for Miller Moss, coming into USC, started out good, ended in a dud, and now is heading to Louisville, which is a program that seems to be on the rise in the ACC. And I know you're saying the ACC, well, that's really not saying much. But Miller Moss with a last chance to end his college football career on a high note in Louisville, and with a coach like Jeff Brom, I think that there could be potential for Louisville this season. Everybody's talking about Clemson. Everybody talks about Miami and SMU. But Louisville hasn't really been talked about as much. And maybe some of it has to do with the recent years. They had good success last season. But now with the addition of Miller Moss, can they be able to make a run at the ACC, a legitimate run at the ACC? So now as we go on from the players, we're going to move to the coaches. And there's two that come to mind for me right out of the gate. And this is where we get into, you categorize it in a way. Usually when somebody is cooking something on the stove, on the grill, whatever, and you hear that sizzle, you hear that nice little sizzle, it kind of gets you excited. It gets you kind of hyped up because you're going to get a nice cut of beef, pork chop, whatever is your vice. Me personally, it's the ribeye cut. But you're about to get that ribeye. It smells good. You hear that sizzle and you're getting excited. But after a while, you start asking, well, where's the steak? I've been hearing this sizzle the entire time. But where's the steak? And I think two coaches fit that category. And the first one is Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. We know that he is a guaranteed Guaranteed content machine when it comes to the world of college football. You've seen how he's been trolling Hugh Freeze on social media lately. And really, who hasn't he trolled throughout his career in college football? And he has done a great job at Ole Miss. I will give him that. He has done a fantastic job at Ole Miss, bringing them into contention for the SEC. Lane Kiffin's a lot of sizzle. But in 2025, are we finally going to see the steak? He got the win over Georgia last season, but they also fell to Kentucky and to Florida near the end, which killed their hopes for the college football playoff. Is the expectation playoff or bust for Lane Kiffin? Can he finally start winning those big games and getting Ole Miss to that next level? Can we finally get the steak with the sizzle? And then another coach, and it's obvious, and some of you are probably going to hate me for this, but I'm going to say Deion Sanders. I think Deion Sanders has much to prove in 2025. Going back to, we've seen all the sizzle of Coach Prime. And don't get me wrong, Coach Prime is great for college football. I love that Deion Sanders is in college football. I know people don't like his flashy persona. They don't like the attitude sometimes. They don't like his style. Yorkie on the Twitch chat's already saying that Deion is a bust. He has to prove him wrong in 2025. We got to get the steak with the sizzle. And why do I say that to begin with? It's because we've seen all of the sizzle, all of the hype. You remember infamously Dan Lanning in the locker room saying they're playing for clicks. And Deion Sanders against top 25 teams is 1-7. 1-7. And their one win over a ranked team, that team wound up finishing with the same identical record as they did in his first season. And since then, he hasn't been able to get it done. Take it back even further to when he was at Jackson State. Yeah, he won a couple of SWAC titles. But when it came to the Celebration Bowl, legendary HBCU coach Buddy Poe took him to the woodshed in Atlanta. Then they lost again the next year. So yes, why we've been seeing all the sizzle and all the hype in Deion Sanders. Will we finally see the steak? And again, Colorado had an opportunity to walk right into the Big 12 championship and walk right into the playoff. But they went to Arrowhead Stadium and got bounced by Kansas. So I love all of the flash, but I've got to see some substance in 2025. And do we see it in 2025? Because compared to last year, Colorado's schedule isn't as favorable as it was last season. It's not. And now you don't have Travis Hunter. Shedeur Sanders is now in the NFL. Caden Salter, incoming transfer, likely to be the quarterback, competing with incoming freshman Julian Lewis. Do we finally see the steak with the sizzle when it comes to Deion Sanders and when it comes to Lane Kiffin? Yorkie in the chat goes, Tennessee is in that boat. I think Tennessee takes a step back. I think they take a step back this year. With the saga with Nico Iamaleava, they're bringing in the quarterback who came from App State to UCLA, now heading to Tennessee. they lost a lot on the defensive side as well. And if you look at just the SEC heading into this season, you got a Florida team that's on the rise. Alabama's probably going to be on a bounce back. You look at Texas, which is going to be highly touted. Ole Miss, new quarterback coming in Austin Simmons, which there's a lot of positive reviews about that guy. A lot of them. Like, it seems where you see some of the SEC team stocks going up, Tennessee's might be going down a little bit. Now, yes, they do have a 2026 quarterback that's coming in next year in Faison Brandon, but that's 2026. What did they do in 2025 until he arrives is the big question. And it's going to be tough, because if you thought that the SEC was the Thunderdome last season, ooh, buddy, it may be even worse. But now I will give you the coach I think that has the most to prove in 2025. Clay in the chat on Facebook asked, what about the rumors of Saban coming back? I'll address it real quick. I think it comes down to Miss Terry. It's got to come down to Miss Terry if he comes back or not. Do I feel like Damian Harris said this at SEC Media Days, that he was shocked when Saban retired, and if the right opportunity came along, he would believe that he would come back. I would not fully dismiss it, but I also, on the other hand, ask the question, why? Why? Other than the fact that you missed the grind, and you want to get back into it. You also have to understand, this man is in his 70s now. It would surprise me if Miss Terry looked at it as like, Terry, I'm thinking about going back into coaching. I beg your finest pardon, Nick. I beg your finest pardon. Which, by the way, on ESPN Game Day, he was fantastic. Great analyst, and he looked like he was just living his best life. So, if you put me on a scale of 1 to 10, if I believe that Nick Saban comes back, I would put it at 20 or at 2. 2 out of 10 right now. 2 out of 10. Now, for the coach that I believe has the most to prove in 2025, James Franklin at Penn State. I think the heat is turning up a little bit on him. And with the acquisitions in the transfer portal, and you get weapons for Drew Allar that are not running backs, there's going to be a lot of expectation. And you got to the Big Ten Championship last year to lose to Oregon. But you've had trouble beating Ohio State, and you've had trouble beating Michigan. Now you have the additions of the likes of Oregon, USC, a couple other Big Ten teams that are on the rise. Michigan is probably going to be back in that fold, especially if Bryce Underwood is able to live up to the hype. But I think the pressure is big on James Franklin to be able to win that big game. Yeah, he got his playoff win over Boise State. It still counts, but technically we look at it and go, okay. So they got a playoff bid, but I feel at Happy Valley they want to turn that corner. It seemed that they have been stuck because Michigan, Ohio State have always been in the way. And a lot of it could be, and a lot of it, and most speculate, lack of weapons on the receiving side. Because they had a great running back tandem. And now, since they have added in the weapons at receiver and Drew Aller, I think the expectations have ramped up in Happy Valley. So to me, I feel like James Franklin has the most to prove as a head coach in 2025. Bradley on Facebook goes, does Billy Napier have to win big to stay at Florida, or is Florida struggling to get his buyout paid? I will say this now, Billy Napier's job is going to be based on the success of DJ Lagway. That's his meal ticket now. Because if they can't do it with DJ Lagway, then it's not going to be done in the Napier era. And everyone talk about, well, trouble with money and everything like that. If you've learned over time, they'll say that money might be what's the word I'm looking for? A deterrent when it comes to making big decisions. But we all know that's not true. When it's push comes to shove, somebody will fork out the money if they have to buy them out. There is all kinds of money in college football. More of it now having to be spent on revenue sharing, now with the House settlement. But it's going to come down to Billy Napier's success. It's going to come down to TJ Lagway. And Florida, again, plays a psychotic schedule. And then come back again. And Auburn's almost kind of in the same boat. Or Auburn may actually be a little bit worse. Because if Hugh Freeze does not come through this season and he gets fired, who is going to take that job other than to just coach 3 years and get a buyout and then go sip Mai Tais with Ed Orgeron in Destin? When is that going to happen? But Napier has brought in some recruits. There's a lot. He's brought in talent to that team. And you saw the progress that Florida made in 2025 once DJ Lagway took over as the quarterback. Will it continue heading into the 2025 season is going to be the next question. Speaking of teams, we've talked about Florida as maybe one of those teams that has something to prove in 2025. But who are some of the other teams? And I've already mentioned Deion Sanders, so Colorado, obviously that's going to be a team that has something to prove. Ole Miss has something to prove. But somebody that hasn't been mentioned yet. Would you say Georgia has to prove that they are still the standard bearer of the SEC? Even though they got beat by Alabama, Ole Miss, but they were able to defend or get back the SEC title. Mizzou has a lot. Mizzou, it seems like every season they have a lot. They have something to prove. Now, I think they brought in that backup quarterback from Penn State, Bo Pribula. I think that's his name, which Eli Drinkowitz has been able to get freshman talent. But some of them I know have went off into the portal. But one team that I just want to see prove it a little more, or they really have something to prove, and especially in the Big Ten, and that's USC. Now, who's going to be Lincoln Riley's quarterback? They've finally been able to solve the problem on defense with defensive coordinator D'Anton Lynn coming in. But after a 4-5 record in the Big Ten last season, I feel like USC has got a lot to prove in 2025. That Lincoln Riley, his tenure there just wasn't a complete dud. The USC Blinken Lincolns. I like that. Because now, it's funny because Lincoln Riley was at Oklahoma. They were going to the SEC. He decides to go to USC where it's the Pac-12. Then they go to the Big Ten. So I'll say if there was any escape from competition, it hasn't been very successful. But they've got to prove that they can compete when it comes to the Big Ten. Because you look at the resources that USC has in the city of Los Angeles. What young kid wouldn't want to go there? Who would not? Bradley on Facebook says, I think Oklahoma is a team that is going to have to step up this year. Yeah, because Brent Venables is on the hot seat. If it doesn't get done this year, then yes, Brent Venables is going to be gone. And you also bring in the transfer quarterback from Washington State, John Mateer. They are going to have to step up also for the reason their schedule is absolutely psychotic. Psychotic. And is it going to be easy for them? Now, they have a new offensive coordinator coming in, so the only way to go is up for Oklahoma on the offensive side this season. But looking at some other, I think that Oregon, you're saying, what's Oregon got to prove? What does Oregon have to prove? They were in the playoff last season. They won the Big Ten championship. With all the money that Phil Knight has put into that program, he is wanting to get Oregon a national championship. And I got to feel like this would be a season to prove that they have staying power in the national conversation. Because if you look at their recruiting classes the last couple of years, and now you're going and challenging Ohio State, you go in and challenging Michigan, Penn State, which they may not play all of them in 1 year because there's too many damn teams in each league now. But especially after getting absolutely embarrassed in the Rose Bowl by Ohio State. And somebody was like, well, does Ohio State have anything to prove in 2025? They have to prove that they are in the picture, that they can stay in the picture. Winning a national championship is tough, or winning two of them in a row is tough. And the last time that it was done was by Alabama in 2011 and 2012. And then Florida did it in 06 and 07, and I think Nebraska in the 90s. If you want to count USC's 2003, 2004, when they had the AP National Championship and a BCS title, which I think they got back from the NCAA after it was null and void. Yorkie asked, what about Beamer ball? And I'm guessing South Carolina. Yes, I feel like there's something to prove. They're going to have another tough schedule again. Lenore Sellers is coming back. He's going to have a weapon. But the thing that could be their Achilles heel could be their running back situation. They were supposed to have a transfer that was coming in, but the NCAA, for some reason, picking and choosing who would get eligible for an extra year. That could be the Achilles heel coming into this season. And I would be surprised if Shane Beamer's job was in any danger whatsoever at South Carolina, especially after last season. Hype will kill South Carolina. It usually does. It usually does. And I feel like Clemson has a lot to prove for the fact that not all ACC teams are complete dog shit. Speaking of dog shit, if you want to encapsulate Florida State's 2024 season, it was dog shit. A 2-10 record, and also for the fact that the fan bailed on actually eating dog excrement out of a red Solo cup when he said that he would do it on Twitter. So if you're asking me for what Florida State has to prove, which you could say everything, but the big thing that they have to prove is that they are not cursed by dog shit. Now, Thomas Castellanos, he's been very confident lately, the transfer quarterback from Boston College that has come in. Gus Malzahn, now no longer head coach at UCF, coming in as the offensive coordinator at Florida State. And then they have to go and play Alabama to start off their season. Oh, boy. But what would encapsulate breaking the curse of the dog poop for Florida State? Now, I know that there was a fan that stepped up and ate dog poop and hoping to rid of this bad karma for Florida State. I respect it. It's also gross. But that was not his burden to bear, which is probably why it didn't work after he did it. But Thomas Castellanos has been very, very confident. And there's nothing wrong with confidence. But you're also going to give somebody bulletin board material too. You can say Thomas Castellanos may have something to prove just in that first game against Alabama, that he can back up the talk. Fine by me. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. But that, we look at it, the teams, the players, the coaches who have the most to prove in 2025. And as I part ways today, and this is kind of an old topic, I haven't really had a chance to talk about it, but I just want to throw it out there. There had been chatter at SEC Media Days in Atlanta about what the future of the college football playoff and whether or not the SEC would play a 9-game conference schedule just like the Big Ten, just like the ACC and others. Greg Sankey has made it pretty clear that right now they're not going to do it. And do I feel like maybe he's using the 9-game conference schedule maybe as a bargaining chip? Because you remember a while back when they were talking about changes for the playoff after this current contract runs out, that they were looking into automatic qualifiers, where the SEC, the Big Ten would get 4, the Big 12, the ACC would get 2, a group of 5 would get 1, and then you would have 3 at-large bids, which I found to be asinine. And anybody who thought that it was a good idea is foolish. And it stems again from SEC teams that were left on the outside looking in and being mad that SMU and Indiana got in. Well, why did SMU and Indiana get in? No, it wasn't a conspiracy theory with the College Football Playoff Committee to keep SEC teams out. That's stupid. And anybody who tells you that, tell them they're dumb. The playoff committee was wanting to give Alabama and Ole Miss those spots in the playoff. The problem is that they lost the third game. Ole Miss lost theirs to Florida. Alabama got drummed by Oklahoma. And I'm sorry, but going in as a 2-touchdown favorite and getting beat by 21 against an offense that was in the plus 100 ranks in the FBS just doesn't do it for me. There's like, will they play in the SEC? Well, and Greg Sankey also brought out, it's like, I don't think any other teams from other conferences are, and I'm paraphrasing, knocking down their doors for an SEC schedule. It sounds like an excuse to me. Well, like, well, they played a tough schedule compared to Indiana and SMU. What did SMU's schedule and Indiana's schedule have anything to do with your performance on the field? Tell me that. I'll answer it for you. Nothing. Yeah, you didn't like that SMU went into the playoff, got drilled by Penn State. You didn't like that Indiana went into the playoff and got beat by Notre Dame. Would that result have probably changed? No. No, it wouldn't have. You think a 9-3 Alabama team would have came in there and did better in Happy Valley? Probably not. They didn't do well in the ReliaQuest Bowl against Michigan. Ole Miss, maybe. With a chip on their shoulder. But again, if we're going to go to this automatic qualifier where we're doing handouts instead of the one thing I'll say about the College Football Playoff Committee is they have kept the integrity of results on the field, and that you actually have to earn an at-large bid. If you win a conference championship, that is earning it, and you should be in the playoff. In which I had no problem with I had one problem with the format from last season. And that is now conference championship buys. They should just go to the top 4 teams, and Notre Dame should be eligible for it if they are in that top 4. So what is the future of the college football playoff? Will it be 12? Will it be 14? Will it be 16? Will it be 5 automatic bids and then the rest of them at large, which I would prefer, to make them earn it on the field and based on their merit throughout the season? Or are we going to go with this automatic qualifier, which would be an absolute disaster? And also, the SEC, just play 9 games. It's what we want as fans. Just go ahead and do it. The fact you're saying, oh, it may ruin playoff chances. Stop making excuses. You are the Southeastern Conference, not the Southern Excuse Commission. For a conference that beats its chest like it's the last bastion of manhood in college football, in the same breath can turn around and whine like a teenage girl when they don't get their way. Stop it. Just stop it right now. That's going to do it for this edition of On the Marks. We hope you enjoyed today. Quick plans for the channel. I'm trying on Twitch to get to 50 followers so I can get the affiliation. We'll have some gaming content as well. I've got a copy of NCAA 26. We're going to do this show right now every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern, noon Central, for the time being. Once the season starts, we'll move it to Friday and Monday. So that way we have a preview, and then we have a reaction from each week in college football, NFL, so on and so forth. And so if you're watching me on YouTube, give me a subscription. If you're watching on Twitch, give me a follow if you haven't already. And I'll post clips of the show on TikTok, on Instagram, and on Threads as well. We're hoping to build this up over time. So if you like the content that you've watched today, support it any way that you can, because eventually I want to get to the Twitch affiliation so that way I can bring in subscriptions, which would be $8 a month. That's all I would ask as far as the subscription. Give me a little support. The more support I get, the more content that I will create on this show, and I will even make it a lot better from a production standpoint as we go forward. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next Tuesday. Again, follow me on Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok, all at On the Marks Media. That's going to do it for this edition of the show. Thank you again for watching. We'll see you next week.